Greetings, I hope this video finds everybody doing all right. This is Coach Fleischer, and in this presentation, we'll be going over spotting. Now, with workouts and spotting, there are some basic and fundamental things that one needs to pay attention to for the safety of the person performing the exercise, but also for the safety of the people around the person performing the exercise, as well as the person doing the spotting. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched people spot in a gym and they've placed not only the lifter, but the person doing the spotting themselves in a perilous situation, just about causing injury to both participants because they just didn't take the time to really evaluate their situation. Now, this is by no means exhaustive, but we'll go over a few of the finer points of spotting. Now, from a coaching standpoint and having trained a ton of people, spotting, fingers and quotes there, it's definitely part of a much bigger picture. As a person who is leading somebody else through an exercise program, and a person who's leading somebody else who perhaps has never, ever done a particular exercise, there's more to spotting than just having fingers and hands on the bar, right? I mean, it should do several things. It should provide a higher degree of safety. It should also put the participant in a position of positive reps. I always call it a positive rep environment, but what you're trying to do is reinforce a positive rep environment while having your client push themselves maximally through an effort. Now, at first, when people start working out, you have to undershoot on the weights and they have to kind of get used to the movement patterns, etc. But after the first couple of weeks, when they start actually getting stronger due to muscular changes, right? Not so much the coordination between the central nervous system and the muscles, you have to be able to elicit a training response to gain the results that you want and that your client wants. And to do that, you sometimes have to push your clients along a little bit and work them through a range of motion and maybe a couple reps that they wouldn't normally do on their own. So part of this is preparing your clients through prudent program design. Part of this is good communication and communicating to your client regarding what you're looking for them to accomplish. And another part of this is just setting the expectation in terms of what spotting looks like for your client or from you to your client. All right. Beyond that, spotting also involves, beyond the one-on-one between you and your client, kind of understanding your environment, right? And understanding what exercise you're doing. A dumbbell bicep curl carries with it a much lower degree of difficulty, therefore a much lower degree of risk than, say, a snatch movement pattern or a power clean movement pattern where it's very dynamic. And not only are the surroundings, not only is the exercise important and the movement pattern important, but also the surroundings are important. So there is not the risk of injury to the client, the spotter, or others around the workout area. So with spotting itself, it has to be kind of in a way, you have to position yourself correctly. Like this gentleman here on his bench press is spotting himself over top of the individual, and he's doing a good job of helping this person through his 35 attempt on bench press. Don't know how many reps he's doing there, but exercise has two different phases, especially when you look at a multi-joint exercise like a bench press. The elbows are moving, the shoulders are moving as the bar moves through its movement pattern from up position down to the chest and back up. We know muscles are generally stronger in one phase versus the other, and they're generally stronger in the negative phase. So in this case, as the individual is lowering the bar down to the chest. Now, negative and positive, as we'll see in this class, are usable in many different workout scenarios, but just for sake of this example, this individual is helping this person along. So with this type of spotting, he's there, the hands are near the bar, he's ready to offer assistance if needed. You also have a gentleman over here who's well dressed to spot in his button-down shirt, and maybe there's somebody over here in a three-piece suit or a tuxedo, I'm not sure, but realize this individual probably is doing a maximal attempt, and he has 3 spotters around him, 1 on each side and 1 over top in case he ever gets into trouble. So that's the other bullet point here is when you get into more maximal attempts with heavier weights and the risk factor is that much higher, you have to have in place additional spotters who can help a person out if they get into trouble. So again, when you're preparing your athletes for a particular lift, You would presume if you're going to have somebody do a maximal attempt like this individual who was doing bench press in the last screen, they've had a long preparatory phase. They've gone through several weeks of training to go through a max out. You wouldn't put your client or your athlete on a bench press and ask them to max out day one if they've never worked out before. It's counterintuitive, and you're asking for a catastrophic injury to happen. Second of all, with the verbal and nonverbal cues, there's a bit of trust that happens between client and trainer, where when you work with your athletes or you work with your clients, you can have your hands on them and get a training response without ever saying anything to them. So the cues themselves and what you're offering are both verbal and nonverbal. And as a coach or a trainer, you really have to have a good understanding of just how much of a load you're placing on your clients, and is it appropriate for their training age, their chronological age, their health history, and what they're attempting to do. And quite frankly, what they've done over the previous weeks leading up to that attempt. So it comes down a little bit to programming, right? Have you programmed your athletes or your clients correctly for that maximal attempt? Do you know how many pounds they can actually push and how many reps they can do at that level? Is it truly a high watermark for that person? Because if it is, that changes the context of the maximal attempt. Believe me, you can calculate out mathematically a maximum for a client based off of the number of reps they complete at a particular weight. Mathematically, I can show you that, and you'll see that in this class. So it depends also what type of max you're going to have them do. Is it an absolute, or I'm sorry, a training max, where you're just calculating out the reps and the weight? Or is it a test out max where you're taking them through maybe a 12-week program to have them test out before they go to an in-season phase? It depends, right? And these are things you have to be aware of when you spot. So with the verbal and nonverbal, you want to have good exercise introduction. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Show them what the heck they're doing. You yourself may have to get down and provide a demonstration if you're not familiar with the exercise. And quite frankly, I would question, if they're not familiar with the exercise, why are you having them test out? You know you might have a couple questions regarding the exercise from your clients or your athletes. And then you might have somebody who has a particular shoulder injury, back injury, knee injury. Those are usually the main ones, where you have to offer some options to either progress or regress the exercise and offer modifications. Leading up to a maximal attempt, where you might need a spotter, you would have different lower level or lower load attempts leading up to that as a way to prep the body. Again, the preparation leading to a maximal attempt isn't reserved to multiple weeks training up to a max attempt. Even in a single workout session where you're doing a maximal attempt, you wouldn't come in and put your maximal load on the bar and try to bench press it or squat it. You would lead up to that and incrementally lead up to that. And there's a bit of art and science to how much you ramp up and how quickly, so you're not pre-fatiguing too much, so you can actually have a true maximal attempt. And we'll get into that when we get into maxes later on. And then when you're cueing your clients, you usually want to have like this 2-to-1 ratio, right? You have to offer negative feedback to correct people because God knows they might do something incorrect. But you should have positive and negative feedback tied in together on that. So it's not all just negative, 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 where you've done this wrong, done this wrong, done this wrong. There should be some positive reinforcement in there as well. So spotting is a bit of a different animal, right? When you look at spotting for maximal attempts, or you look at spotting for a particular exercise. So when you look at this video over here to the right, this video is one of many that I'll load up for you guys throughout the course of our class. But in this exercise, if we can tap on this guy and get him going here, in this exercise, you have an individual who's going to use a bow suit. And this is an introduction to the bow suit itself. There it is. One side flat, one side bubbled. And with that, you can do different exercises on your bow suit. So for example, we'll go right to a bow suit crunch bubble side up. What you do though is you introduce the actual piece of equipment to the client first, and then you go ahead and spot them. And then you go ahead and walk them through the process to even mount or dismount. Get on that dang bow suit or get off of it. Get onto a physio ball or get off of it. You don't have them try to perform squats standing on a physio ball. That's elite level stuff. You start off by introducing the physio ball, doing exercises like crunches. Perhaps you're doing squats with the ball against the wall, or you're doing other exercises that includes being seated or lying down when you're changing their body position, so you introduce them further to the ball, and then you incrementally ramp up to where they end up doing squats while standing on a physio ball. Tough little exercise. And let that guy do another crunch or two there. Oh, yeah. Now, some kind of rules of thumb from the book, right? They have like 4 main ones. One of which is if it's overhead, like a shoulder press, you need a spotter. If it's performed over the face, like a bench press or a tricep extension, you need a spotter. If it's placed on the upper back, like a squat, you definitely need a spotter. And if it's in front of the shoulders, like a front squat, you need a spotter. Now, I will point out that when you get into United States Weightlifting Federation, they do note that for power cleans, power snatch, etc., you're not spotting your athletes per se and being in a hands-on position. The risk is too high that the spotter can be injured in the completion of a missed attempt. And so they often guide that when people are spotting on power clean or power snatch type movements, there shouldn't be anybody in front of the athlete. And nobody should walk across the platform and performing those exercises. But the big 4 specific to our book are these here. So if we go into this, you know, I have to say, and this is something I'll do in this class, I'll have my own annotations where I offer my opinion on things. I think spotting has its place not only as a way to protect somebody from injuring themselves, but it can be, in a manner of sense, a way for individuals to go ahead and push themselves beyond their normal comfort zones. They try to get 10 reps and they get to number 8, and they start to get stuck. Number 9, they have difficulty and they need help with number 10. That is putting them in a position where they are completely exhausting the muscle that's trying to be worked, and they're actually going to get better results out of that. Now, it has to be smart, and it has to be done in the context of being purposeful and proper. But long story short, you know, there are times where and when it's appropriate to spot and how to spot. And, you know, when you touch your clients, again, professional and purposeful. You know, I have issue with one of the comments the book made specific to spotting somebody doing a dumbbell bench press where you're holding onto their wrists. I have, in 20 years, I have never ever spotted somebody on the wrist. You spot somebody on the wrist, you run a risk of those dumbbells collapsing in on them. I don't care for that at all. I'm a much bigger fan of spotting on the elbows and putting them in a positive rep environment and having them in a positive rep environment going for a max where they know how to get out of that situation without the dumbbells collapsing on their chest. I don't like doing it on a wrist because it's on the distal end of the arm and it's least stable. I'd much rather spot on the elbows where it's a little more beefy and I can actually get a good grip on them. So in terms of spotting or not to spot, right? Bench press, yeah. Incline press, you bet. Squats, lunges, shoulder press, front squats, everything. We went over those big 4 points earlier. And, you know, other than forced repetitions, you're not going to spot on a bicep curl. You have to be aware of your surroundings in terms of when you spot, and you also have to be aware of your surroundings in terms of what exercises you're spotting on. So if you're doing explosive exercises, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of power clean, power snatch, both the NSCA and the USWF agree not to spot on explosive exercises. You are not going to be on the platform with that athlete. And so when you're looking at spotting per se, this comes down to good coaching. How to successfully miss an attempt and not injure oneself. Because if you are pushing the envelope in your training, you're going to have missed attempts. There's no doubt about it. But missed attempts without injury happen because the athlete has been well prepared. Over here on this side, these individuals who are doing squats or lunges or presses, etc., yes, I like spotting. I like spotting for safety, but I also like spotting to be able to eke out another rep or two, to be able to push oneself past their comfort zone and get some good growth. All right, so with that, I hope that sheds a little bit of light on spotting. The book does have some further information on spotting, but what you'll see is if we get out of this and we go back into Blackboard, you have an entire series of checklists that's in Activities 1. You'll see spotting checklists right here, and I'll have a video up soon enough. So you can reference these different checklists for different exercises. All right, guys, have a good one, and be on the lookout for more videos. You're going to have a bunch as the semester goes along. Thanks. Checking out.